Eliza thought she was just rescuing a wounded cowboy. She had no idea she was nursing the most powerful man in town and stepping straight into a battle that could destroy everything she loved. This story is just getting started. Smash that subscribe button and tell us in the comments, what would you have done in Eliza's place? And where in the world are you watching from? The storm pounded Eliza Monroe's ranch, the wind snapping the gate from her hands. As she fought it closed, a flash of lightning lit up the field, and she saw him, a man crumpled in the mud, not moving. For a heartbeat, she thought it might be a stray calf. But another flash revealed a boot, a hand slick with blood. She sprinted toward him, boots sinking deep in the wet ground. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, dark with a gunshot wound. His face was pale, jaw tight even in unconsciousness. "Hey," Eliza called, dropping to her knees beside him. "Can you hear me?" Faint groan. Relief flooded her chest, but fear followed fast. He was alive, but barely. Her fingers worked quickly, checking for more injuries. That's when she noticed the oddest thing. Beneath his battered clothes were polished boots. Real leather, expensive. A gold belt buckle flashed under the rain-soaked shirt. Whoever he was, he didn't belong out here. The storm raged harder. Eliza glanced toward the road, heart hammering. Whoever did this might still be out there, and if they found him, they might not leave witnesses. She didn't hesitate. Hooking her arms under his, she hauled him toward the barn. He was dead weight, and her muscles burned with the effort, but adrenaline kept her moving. The old barn doors groaned as she slammed them shut behind her. Inside, the smell of hay and rain-soaked wood filled her lungs. She lowered him onto a pile of straw and ripped an old cloth into strips, pressing it hard against the bleeding shoulder. He didn't wake. His chest rose and fell shallowly under the blanket she threw over him. Eliza wiped her hands on her jeans and crouched beside him, studying his face. He looked rough around the edges, but something about him, the fine clothes, the stubborn set of his jaw, spoke of money and power, not desperation. Her fingers brushed the battered wallet tucked into his belt, but she pulled back. She didn't want to know just yet, didn't want to find something that would make her regret saving him. Thunder rattled the roof overhead. She grabbed an old rifle from the wall and settled beside the barn door, keeping one eye on the stranger and the other on the dark beyond. "Who are you?" she whispered into the crackling silence. The only answer was the storm. Eliza's mind raced as she sat there, every creak of the barn, every howl of the wind making her flinch. She hadn't asked for trouble, but somehow tonight it had found her anyway. She didn't know it yet, but the wounded man on her barn floor would change everything. The ranch, the town, her entire future. And outside, hidden by the storm, someone was already looking for him. Morning light slipped through the cracks of the barn, catching on floating dust. Eliza sat slumped against the wall, the old rifle resting across her lap. She hadn't slept, too wired with fear and uncertainty. A soft groan snapped her awake. She scrambled to her feet as the man stirred. His eyelids fluttered before cracking open, sharp gray eyes blinking up at her, clouded with pain but focused. "You're safe," Eliza said cautiously, stepping closer. "You're at my ranch. You were hurt." He winced, trying to sit up before collapsing back into the straw. Don't call anyone," he rasped. Eliza stiffened. "Not even the doctor? No sheriff, no doctor, no one." His voice was low but firm. Suspicion prickled under her skin. Normal men didn't get shot and hide from lawmen. She narrowed her eyes. "You in some kind of trouble?" He gave a weak, crooked smile. "You could say that. What's your name?" "Cole," he said quickly. "No last name." Eliza folded her arms. "You're awful talkative for someone who's bleeding out." He chuckled dryly, then winced, pressing a hand to his shoulder. "I'll heal. Just need a little time." Against every ounce of better judgment, she found herself nodding. Maybe it was the desperation in his voice. Maybe it was something else, something unspoken between them. "All right, Cole, but if trouble comes here, I'm protecting mine first." Outside, the wind kicked up dust across the fields. Trouble was already sniffing around. Down the dirt road, Victor Kane's black truck idled at a neighbor's ranch. Victor had a way of showing up where he wasn't wanted, always talking about opportunities and good deals, always with a contract in his hand. Folks whispered he wanted the whole valley to himself. Eliza watched the truck from her porch later that afternoon, arms crossed tight over her chest. Victor Kane hadn't come knocking on her door yet, but it was only a matter of time. Rosie, Eliza's best friend and town gossip, arrived not long after, carrying a basket of bread and 100 questions. "I heard shooting last night," Rosie said, eyes darting toward the barn. "You okay?" Eliza forced a smile. "Just the storm, nothing more." But Rosie wasn't convinced. Her gaze was too sharp, lingering too long on Eliza's guarded posture. "You sure you ain't hiding something?" Rosie teased lightly, but her tone held weight. "No secrets here, except the 6-foot-tall one bleeding in her barn." Rosie squinted. Just be careful. Not everyone limping through here is who they say they are. Eliza nodded, heart pounding faster. As Rosie drove away, Eliza leaned back against the porch post, eyes drifting toward the barn. Inside, Cole lay hidden, a mystery she wasn't ready or able to solve. And somewhere beyond her fields, bigger storms were gathering. One's a simple rifle and a locked door might not keep out. Days stretched into a cautious routine. Cole, still favoring his wounded shoulder, insisted on helping around the ranch. He mended the broken fence by the south pasture, stacked bales in the barn, and patched the sagging roof. His movements were stiff but determined. "You don't have to do all this," Eliza said one afternoon, leaning on the fence post as she watched him hammer a stubborn board into place. Cole glanced over, sweat darkening the collar of his borrowed shirt. "I owe you." Eliza didn't argue. In truth, the help was welcome. Since her father passed, the ranch had been slipping through her fingers, more chores than one woman could handle. Still, unease lingered beneath the surface. Cole was good with his hands, sure, but now and then, his eyes would drift toward the hills, always alert, always calculating. Later that week, Sheriff Maddox pulled up in a dust-covered cruiser, kicking up a cloud of dirt as he stepped onto her porch. A heavy-set man with a weathered face, he tapped the brim of his hat in greeting. "Eliza," he said, voice low, "mind if I have a word?" She nodded and led him toward the shade. "There's been talk," he began. "Dangerous men sniffing around town, looking for someone. Heard they've been paying visits to ranches." Eliza stiffened. "What kind of someone?" Maddox shrugged, his gaze sharp. "Fugitive. No names. Just be careful who you trust." Her mind raced. She thought of the black truck parked at the neighboring ranch. Thought of Cole's mysterious injuries, his refusal to involve the law. She forced a tight smile. "Always am." After Maddox drove off, Eliza's nerves stayed frayed. She saddled her horse and rode the ridge line at sunset, the land bathed in gold. That's when she spotted it. A sleek black SUV, parked half-hidden among the scrub brush on a distant hill, facing directly toward her ranch. She squinted. Whoever they were, they weren't hiding well enough. By the time she rode back down, the SUV was gone, but the chill under her skin lingered. Meanwhile, back inside the barn, Cole sat hunched on a hay bale, his battered phone balanced between his hands. It wasn't the phone Eliza had seen him with, it was something older, something he kept hidden deep in his saddlebag. He dialed a number he knew by heart. The call connected after a single ring. "Lancaster here," came a clipped voice. "It's Cole," he said in a low voice. "I'm safe for now, but they're moving faster than we thought. Kane's men are sniffing around already." There was a pause on the line. "Understood. Hold position. Help is coming." "And Cole?" "Yeah, don't get attached." Cole stared across the darkened barn, where a lamp glowed faintly in Eliza's kitchen window. "Too late," he muttered under his breath before killing the call. In the gathering dusk, secrets hung heavier than the storm clouds building in the west. The night air hung thick and humid as another storm rolled across the plains. Inside the small ranch house, Eliza sat by the window, unable to sleep. Her gaze drifted between the distant hills and the steady rise and fall of Cole's chest where he lay resting on the worn-out couch. A sudden murmur broke the stillness. Cole, tangled in dreams, tossed his head against the pillow. "No, the hospital. They can't take it," he mumbled, voice ragged with fear. Eliza leaned forward, heart pounding. She caught only fragments: hospital, betrayal, Kane. His hands clenched into fists as he struggled against unseen enemies. Then, just as quickly, he quieted, slipping back into deeper sleep. Eliza sat frozen, her mind racing. Hospital? What hospital? And what did it have to do with Victor Kane? The next morning, she couldn't shake the unease. Over coffee, she relayed the incident to Rosie, her closest friend and the town's most avid internet sleuth. "He said something about a hospital?" Rosie asked, pulling out her tablet. Eliza nodded. "It wasn't random. He was scared." Rosie's fingers flew over the screen. "Give me a minute." Eliza returned to her chores, trying to keep her mind off the gnawing doubts, but it wasn't long before Rosie burst into the barn, tablet in hand. "Eliza, you're not gonna believe this," Rosie said breathlessly. "There's a missing persons report filed a few months back. Name's Cole Barrett, billionaire, owns half the hospitals from here to the coast." Eliza felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "You're saying my mystery cowboy is Cole Barrett?" "Looks just like him," Rosie confirmed, showing a grainy photo. The same rugged jawline, same piercing eyes. Only in the photo, he was clean-shaven and wearing a suit. Eliza stared, stunned. No wonder his boots didn't match the rest of him. No wonder he feared the sheriff. Meanwhile, trouble was growing closer to home. That afternoon, Eliza found her chicken coop smashed, fence posts kicked down, and the barn door hanging from one hinge. Victor Kane's men had come calling. She gritted her teeth, fixing what she could, but the warning was clear: sell or suffer. By sunset, Rosie's words still echoed in Eliza's mind. She sat on the porch, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, watching Cole work quietly in the paddock. Was he lying to her, or was he hiding because he had no choice? As if sensing her eyes, Cole glanced over his shoulder, offering a crooked smile. The sight twisted something inside her, a mix of loyalty, anger, and something dangerously close to trust. Eliza wrapped her arms tighter around herself, her mind a whirl of questions. She had taken in a wounded man, had fed him, protected him, but who exactly had she brought into her home? And more importantly, what storm was she about to be caught in? The wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Somewhere beyond the hills, unseen forces stirred, drawing ever closer to her doorstep. The tension in the air was palpable as Eliza stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the letter that had arrived by courier earlier that afternoon. The official letterhead screamed of power, Victor Kane's signature stamped at the bottom, a silent threat woven between the lines. She balled the paper into a tight fist and tossed it into the trash, her fingers trembling. They wanted her land. They wanted everything. A final chance to sell her ranch or face consequences. She didn't need to read it again to know what it meant. If she didn't comply, they'd stop at nothing to take it from her. Eliza! The soft voice cut through her thoughts. She turned to find Cole standing in the doorway, his face unreadable. His eyes, though, were a different story, tight, haunted. Is it from Kane? He asked, stepping inside, his boots making no sound against the hardwood floor. Eliza nodded, the weight of the letter pressing down on her chest. They want my land. Cole's jaw clenched, and for a moment, he looked like he might say something, but he didn't. Instead, he crossed the room and sat down at the kitchen table, his presence somehow both comforting and unsettling. Have you thought about it? He asked carefully. No, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. I won't sell. I didn't think you would. His gaze softened, then hardened again. But you're not safe here, Eliza. She took a step closer, her heart beating faster. I don't need your pity, Cole. I'm not running. His face tightened, and he stood up abruptly, walking over to the window. It's not about pity. It's about survival. Eliza could hear the truth in his voice, the warning, the tension. She knew they were both playing a dangerous game, but now, with Kane's men looming closer, she realized how much was at stake. I can protect myself, Eliza said, her chin lifting. I don't need anyone to fight my battles for me. Cole's eyes flickered with something unreadable. He took a deep breath and turned to face her. You're right. You don't need me to fight your battles, but I can help you prepare for them. Eliza furrowed her brow, unsure of what he meant. Before she could ask, Cole stepped forward, lowering his voice. I know you don't trust me, don't trust anyone, but if you want to stay safe, if you want to protect your ranch, I'll teach you how to fight back. She stared at him, caught between disbelief and curiosity. Self-defense. Cole nodded, his gaze unwavering. We'll start slow, but you'll need to be ready for whatever's coming. Eliza swallowed, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the gravity of the situation, the weight of the decisions to come. Cole was offering her something more than just lessons. He was offering her a chance to protect herself in a world that was getting more dangerous by the day. And despite her pride, despite the walls she'd built around herself, Eliza knew she needed to take him up on it. Because the storm that was coming didn't care about her pride, her ranch, or even the truth. It would tear through everything unless she was ready. Cole's eyes locked with hers, silent understanding passing between them. I'll teach you everything you need to know, he said quietly. And in that moment, Eliza realized she had no choice but to trust him. The sharp scent of smoke ripped through the night like a blade. Eliza jolted awake, heart pounding, to the sound of frantic neighing. She stumbled out of bed, feet hitting the floor just as Rosie burst through the door, wild-eyed and gasping for breath. Eliza! The barn? It's on fire. The world narrowed to a single point of horror. Without thinking, Eliza grabbed her boots, yanked them on, and raced outside into the choking smoke. The sky was a furious orange, the barn engulfed in towering flames. Sparks shot into the dark like fireflies from hell. The animals! Eliza screamed, sprinting toward the burning structure. Rosie was already there, fumbling with the latch to the goat pen. Eliza threw herself at the stables, coughing, eyes streaming, fumbling with knots she couldn't see. Terror and adrenaline roared in her ears. From the shadows, Cole appeared, shouting orders, helping herd the panicked animals away from the growing inferno. He moved with speed and precision, despite the strain on his face. Eliza caught a glimpse of him throwing a heavy beam aside, gritting his teeth in obvious pain. The horses shrieked, kicking and fighting against the smoke. Together, they got them out barely. The barn barn itself groaned, timbers buckling under the relentless fire, as Eliza and Rosie staggered back, leading the last terrified goat into the pasture. A crash split the air as part of the roof caved in. Eliza coughed violently, pulling her shirt over her mouth. Rosie leaned against her, exhausted and shaking, but alive. Then a scuffle caught Eliza's attention. Beyond the barn, deeper into the dark fields, Cole fought off two masked men. She barely saw it, the flash of fists, a grunt of pain, the shine of a blade. Cole landed a brutal punch that sent one man sprawling, but he staggered afterward, clutching his side. Eliza started toward him, but the attackers fled into the night, disappearing into the trees. By the time Sheriff Maddox arrived, summoned by a frantic call from Rosie, the fire was a blackened ruin and Cole was slumped against the fence, pale and breathing hard. What the hell happened here? Maddox demanded, surveying the wreckage. Eliza shook her head, still dazed. It wasn't an accident. Maddox crouched near the ruined barn, examining the scorched ground. He picked up something, half of a cloth rag, doused in accelerant. Arson, he said grimly, and professional. Rosie hovered behind Eliza, her face pinched with fear. Who would do this? Maddox rose, his face like stone. The way they hit you, organized, brutal. This wasn't just some punks raising hell. He paused, lowering his voice. Found tire tracks too. Same make and model that hospital security uses. Eliza's blood turned to ice. Hospital insiders. Victor Kane's reach was longer and dirtier than she'd imagined. Cole stirred weakly, trying to push himself upright. Eliza knelt beside him, worry gnawing at her gut as she saw the blood soaking through his shirt. Stay still, she said, voice low but fierce. You've done enough. He managed a faint, crooked smile before closing his eyes. Eliza gripped his hand tightly. This wasn't just about land anymore. This was war. The rain had rolled in by morning, leaving the ranch soggy and gray under a weeping sky. Eliza sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of untouched coffee, her mind spinning. Cole lay on the worn-out couch, bandaged and feverish but stubbornly awake. He watched her in silence for a long moment before he finally spoke, his voice rough with pain and something heavier. I owe you the truth, he said. Eliza stiffened but didn't look away. After everything, she deserved at least that. Cole pushed himself upright with a grimace, resting his forearms on his knees. My real name, it's Cole Barrett. The words hit the room like a hammer. Eliza blinked, heart thudding, waiting for more. She remembered Rosie's frantic discovery, the missing billionaire, the hospitals, the photos that looked so much like the man she'd taken into her home. I own the hospital, he continued, voice low. Not just this one, but others up and down the coast. I was a silent investor here, 2 land deals, expansions, all supposed to help the town, the people. Her fingers tightened around her mug. Supposed to. Cole's jaw clenched. I started digging after some numbers didn't add up. Financial fraud, embezzlement. Dr. Lila Grant was at the center of it. She partnered with Victor Kane to funnel hospital funds into private land grabs. Eliza stared at him, the pieces clicking together like ominous thunder. The threats, the arson, the pressure to sell, they weren't random. They tried to buy me off, Cole said bitterly. When that didn't work, they sent men after me. I barely got away. His hand brushed the bandages at his side. A lump rose in Eliza's throat. Part of her wanted to rage, to scream at him for lying, for hiding who he really was. She had trusted him, opened her home, her life, and yet he hadn't been hiding to protect himself. He had been running from the same forces now threatening her ranch. He had stayed, fought, bled for her, for the animals, for everything she cared about. Eliza set her coffee down with trembling hands. You should have told me. I wanted to, Cole said, meeting her gaze, raw and unguarded. But I thought, if they knew you were helping me, they'd come after you even harder. I couldn't let that happen. Tears stung her eyes, and she blinked them away angrily. Trust wasn't easy for her. It never had been. But as she looked at Cole, bruised, battered, and yet unbroken, she saw not a billionaire or a runaway, but the man who had thrown himself into a burning barn for her animals, who had taught her to fight when fear might have paralyzed her. You're an idiot, she whispered, voice thick. A ghost of a smile tugged at his lips. Yeah, he said, but I'm your idiot if you'll have me. Eliza let out a shaky laugh, swiping at her face. The storm might not be over, but they were in it together now, for better or worse. The days that followed blurred into a storm of planning, fear, and fragile hope. Eliza and Cole sat side by side at the kitchen table each night, combing through the evidence Cole had managed to collect before he was attacked. Bank statements, fraudulent contracts, and internal emails, all tying Dr. Grant and Victor Kane to a web of corruption that had poisoned their town for too long. You're sure about this? Eliza asked one evening, her fingers brushing lightly over a stack of papers. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down hard. Cole nodded grimly. It's the only way. We have to hit them before they can strike again. Outside, Rosie's truck rumbled into the driveway, and moments later she burst through the door, hair wind-tossed and eyes alight with excitement. She had become their secret weapon, using her skills to dig even deeper. "I got it," Rosie announced, slapping a flash drive onto the table. Financial records, private emails, everything they didn't want anyone to see. Took some creative hacking, but it's rock solid. Eliza exchanged a glance with Cole, a fierce pride swelling in her chest. They weren't alone anymore. Rosie grinned, practically bouncing. "I'll leak it to the press tonight. Once it's out there, Kane and Grant won't be able to hide." Cole hesitated, then gave a short nod. "Do it." As Rosie worked her magic, the tension around town began to shift. Whispers grew louder. Suspicious glances turned into open questions. Rumors spread like wildfire about Kane's shady land deals, about the hospital's missing funds, about Dr. Grant's lies. Then the tipping point came. Sheriff Maddox, once so tightly bound by Kane's influence, called a town meeting. Word traveled fast, and by the time Eliza and Cole arrived at the courthouse steps, a large crowd had gathered: farmers, ranchers, shopkeepers, faces worn by hardship but hardened by anger. Sheriff Maddox stood on the courthouse porch, a stern figure with a file tucked under his arm. He looked out over the crowd, clearing his throat. "An investigation has been launched into Dr. Lila Grant and Victor Kane," he announced, voice carrying strong and clear. "The evidence speaks for itself." A murmur rippled through the crowd, growing louder as Maddox continued. "I swore an oath to protect this town," he said, jaw tight, "and it's time I start honoring it." Cheers broke out, echoing through the streets. Eliza felt Cole's hand brush hers, a quiet, steadying touch. For the first time in weeks, hope didn't feel like a fragile dream. Felt real, solid. Rosie appeared beside them, her face flushed with victory. "They're finally listening," she said. Eliza smiled, a fierce, determined thing. "It's just the beginning." They had been backed into a corner, pushed, threatened, nearly broken. But not anymore. Now they were the ones pushing back, and the fight for their town and their future had only just begun. The morning sun broke over the hills with a golden blaze, as if the land itself was ready to witness a long overdue reckoning. Eliza stood outside the courthouse, heart pounding as the sheriff's deputies led Dr. Lila Grant and Victor Kane out in handcuffs. Their faces, once so smug and untouchable, were pale and drawn now, caught beneath the weight of undeniable evidence. The crowd gathered around the courthouse steps erupted into cheers, townsfolk whistling and clapping, some even wiping away tears. Eliza caught sight of Rosie, practically bouncing in place, waving a homemade sign that read "Justice for Willow Creek." Cole stood a few steps away, silent, steady. His presence was a quiet comfort to Eliza, like a lighthouse after a long storm. Sheriff Maddox addressed the crowd, his voice firm. "These arrests are just the start. This town belongs to its people again, and we will rebuild it the right way." The sense of victory was overwhelming, but for Eliza, the news that came next struck even deeper. Later that afternoon, she sat with Cole in her kitchen, coffee cups between them, when he pulled out a crisp legal document. "What's this?" she asked, suspicion flickering. "A guarantee," Cole said, sliding it toward her. "The ranch is yours, Eliza, legally protected. No one, not Kane, not anyone, can ever take it from you." Her throat tightened as she scanned the page. The seal, the signatures, it was all real. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back, lifting her gaze to his. "Why would you?" "Because you saved me," Cole said simply. "Because this place, it's part of what's good in the world. And because you fought when no one else would." She wanted to say more, but the lump in her throat made words impossible. Instead, she reached across the table and gripped his hand tightly. Meanwhile, changes rippled outward. With Victor Kane's grip broken, Cole moved quickly, reclaiming the hospital that had once been a weapon of greed. He announced sweeping reforms, affordable care for all, an end to the corruption that had bled the town dry. The grand reopening was a festival of its own. Bright banners stretched across Main Street, kids ran laughing between booths, and musicians played on the courthouse lawn. The hospital's doors were thrown wide, welcoming everyone, no matter how heavy their wallet. Cole stood beside the new hospital administrator, accepting thanks and firm handshakes, but his mind wasn't fully there. Even as he smiled, posed for pictures, shook hands, something deeper tugged at him. He hadn't forgotten why he had come to Willow Creek in the first place. It wasn't just the hospital. It wasn't even about Kane or Grant. It was her. Across the square, Eliza laughed with Rosie by the lemonade stand, sunlight glinting off her hair. Cole knew the fight for the town was over, but the fight for Eliza's heart had only just begun. The golden hues of evening stretched across Willow Creek as the town wound down from the day's celebrations. Eliza stood by the paddock, her hand resting on the worn fence, watching the horses graze peacefully. For the first time in what felt like forever, the ranch ranch was truly safe. Her heart, however, still beat with the anticipation of change. Behind her, soft footsteps approached. She turned to find Cole, his familiar smile tugging at his lips, a glint of something nervous in his eyes. He wore no suit, no polished airs, just the man she had come to know, strong, steady, and real. "Eliza," he began, voice low and earnest. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." She raised an eyebrow, half teasing. "If it's about fixing that fence by the east field, I already have it on my list." Cole chuckled, stepping closer until he was only a breath away. Then, before she could make another quip, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it revealed a simple but beautiful ring, gleaming in the fading light. Her breath caught. "I don't want money to ever be a weapon again," Cole said, voice rough with emotion. "I want it to be a shield for you, for this town, for everything we care about. Marry me, Eliza. Build this new life with me." For a long moment, silence wrapped around them, filled only by the distant rustle of the wind. Eliza stared at him, the man who had come into her world wounded and hiding, who had fought beside her when he didn't have to, who had risked everything not for profit but for people. Tears prickled at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back, smiling through the storm of emotions. "I will," she said softly, "on one condition." Cole's brow furrowed. "Anything. No more secrets," she said, voice firm. "Not between us. Not ever again." He didn't hesitate. "No more secrets. I swear it." Relief and joy flooded through her. She slipped her hand into his, letting him slide the ring onto her finger, to fit perfectly, like it had been meant for her all along. The months that followed were a testament to their promise. Together, they rebuilt the ranch bigger and stronger, opening parts of it to the community, offering riding lessons, hosting festivals, teaching kids how to care for animals. The ranch became a heartbeat for the town, a symbol of resilience and hope. Cole split his time between the hospital and the ranch, blending his business acumen with Eliza's grit and heart. It wasn't always easy. Some days were long and some problems stubborn, but they faced everything together, side by side. On a bright spring afternoon, Eliza rode through the newly fenced pastures, sunlight catching the hair that streamed behind her like a banner. Cole stood at the gate, tipping his hat with a grin as she passed by. The town was safe. Their future had just begun. Thank you for joining Eliza and Cole's journey from secrets to new beginnings. If you loved this story of resilience, trust, and second chances, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in the power of loyalty and love. More unforgettable adventures are just around the corner. Stay tuned.